Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the League of Europe. We are finally here for the first of two pre-season races, of course, for season number 8. Of course, my name is Jay Cole, taking you guys through this, hopefully, throughout the season, and join alongside me, hopefully, also throughout the season, our car mentalist. Aidan, how are you doing tonight, my friend?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Yeah, we've both just enjoyed an interesting Lobby One race, which was yeah. So that was definitely fun. So hopefully, Lobby Two can maybe leave off, start where we left off a little bit as well. It'd be great to see. And yeah, of course, these evaluation races are all about trying to pick out who's going to be fitting into which lobby, into which division for the rest of the season, of course. So while the lobby may look a little bit sparse at the moment, doesn't mean it's going to be like this all season, and doesn't mean all of these people that are currently in the lobby at the moment are going to be staying here for the rest of the season either. It's just a bit of a test for everybody to see how they're doing. But I'm excited to get going.
Yeah, no, you and me both as well. And like you say, there's only sort of 13 people that are in the lobby for tonight at this moment anyway. I think Maledictus might be joining very, very soon, just having a few sort of issues at this present moment. But yeah, I said I'm very much looking forward to seeing how this is going to go down. Like you said, this shouldn't be how it goes down in Lobby 2 for the entirety of the season, or for what we call a quote-unquote Division 2. But yeah, hopefully there will be a lot more within the future. But yeah, 13 drivers here for tonight. Is there anybody that you reckon in particular that could be a bit of a standout for yourself?
It's going to be interesting because I think more on this game than we've seen on previous games. There's a bit of a split now between quali and race pace. I think you've got to say this game is so far been quite difficult to manage for an entire 50% race. So being fast over one lap is one thing, and being fast over an entire race distance is a completely different thing. So I think we're going to see standouts in quali and then standouts in the race. I think one person in particular I'm looking to tonight to be probably one of the top ones tonight is probably Luco 5, I would say. We know him from previous seasons as being incredibly consistent no matter what the track is. He was really strong at the end of Division 3 last season, so I imagine he'll probably pick up where he left off and be just as fast this time around in both quali and the race.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Loco 5 is definitely one that we may need to keep our eye out for as well. There's a couple of obviously new guys that are within the league as well. You've got the likes of Marin. I know he's been in LOE for like other things, like I know for GT7. Hyper LM4 was in it last season, I believe. Supermug completely new. Sneaky was on the PC side. So a lot of new and familiar faces as well. Of course, you still got the likes of Larkin, Sully, Timon, of course, Division 2's champion from last season, who will be the first one to do a lap, so we'll keep on board with him. Slash, of course, Evans is a new driver as well. Gary from Division 3 last season. Brendan making a return. And Dan, and as I said, Luke as well from Division 3 for last season as well. So it's going to be an interesting, I think an interesting dynamic. Like you say, there is definitely a pace difference between qualifying and the race. And I think that's really going to sort of show that for tonight as well, especially in the early stages of this game. But right on board, as I said, with QRT Timon making his way now through towards the end of the first sector in that beautiful Alfa Romeo car as well. One of my, I would say, personal favourites. And as I say that, he ends up invalidating on his lap. So Dutchman, of course, trying to retain his Division 2 title. Not exactly a very good start.
No, not a good start, like you're saying. He's if we've watched some of the social races as well from last time out in Spain, he didn't have the best of times in Spain either. So it's been a bit of a slow start, but good thing for Simon at least is that hopefully he's got quite a hill to climb in front of him, but it's got good pace potentially at the top. Of course, he's turned, I think, majority of his to soft, and I think he's converted to wheel in the off season. So it's completely starting from fresh for Thyman this time around. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's maybe a bit slow to start with, but speeds up as the season goes on. I think Sneaky is now the first person on a lap at the moment through the second sector split. It's a 50.4. Probably look to be just in the 49s, I would say, by the end of the second sector. If we're looking for a pole time, you want to be probably high 29s, I would say, would be pole around here for Lobby 2 at the moment. So we'll ride with Sneaky for the rest of the lap as he heads through this final sector, which is where you get the majority of your lap time, really. It's where most of the corners are. It's the longest sector on the circuit then, as he heads through this long right-hander, which isn't really a corner, and then into the final two corners on the lap. Really, really long, slow corner is the penultimate, and then just the final hairpin. Just have to get the traction right, and it's a long run up towards the line. It was extended about 2 games ago, just further down the straight. It used to be here. It's a bit further down. Sneaky, the first time on the board, is a 30.7, and that's immediately beaten by Brenton by 0.6 of a second, who does a 30.1 on his banker lap, which is actually a pretty decent banker, you've got to say, for Brendan.
Yeah, no, it certainly is. Dan as well, a 30.2 on his banker in that Red Bull. Dan, again, one that's not exactly known for his qualifying and already putting it into P2 with a solid banker time in contention with Brendan as well. As I say that, Hyper LM4 chucking it straight on pole position now. The first one in 2 to 29s, and I expect to see quite a few more of those for tonight as well. Marin putting it up into P4 in the other Alfa Romeo. I'm assuming that Timon will probably go again very, very soon if he hasn't already gone again already, which it looks as if he is on another lap. But we'll go on board with somebody that's probably a bit closer to the end of their lap. I believe Evans is going to be the next one to make their way across the line. Of course, the new driver, relatively new in REL as well, I think from what I remember, and a 31.1 for his debut in the League of Europe. So Evans hopefully going to try and build a bit more upon that time. But yeah, Ferraris, I think I'm probably going to want to try and improve that one a little bit more. But a few guys did invalidate on their laps and looking to try and go again. As I said, I think Timon being another one, and he's invalidated for his second lap. So it's not exactly going well for our Division 2 reigning champion.
No, at the moment, not going quite his way, unfortunately. Neither for Slash. So Slash is on his second run. He's missed the apex of the first part of the chicane and then invalidating the second part. So Slash not off to a great start either. The AlphaTauri behind him, Supermug. Pretty decent first sector for Supermug, but he's also invalidated. So a few drivers just struggling to keep the car on the road. I think Sully is the only one on a lap at the moment, but he is also invalidated in the first sector. So drivers kind of struggling to keep the car on the road at the moment, which is fairly easy to do around a track like this, which has acres of runoff, and it's very inviting to go off the circuit here and try and find a little bit more time if you can. So first run's pretty much done, and Hype already a 29.9, a really, really strong time for this first part of qualifying. But again, like I said earlier on, it can mean anything really, can't it? The race pace can be completely different to the qualifying pace. We could see someone a bit further down be the strong one in the race.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. I mean, I know that we've seen the pace of what a few of the other guys can be like. You know, the likes of Luke, the likes of Dari, Larkin. We've seen Sully from last season, Slash as well, and Timon, of course, from being our champion as well. So, you know, there are definitely a few of these guys that you can expect to make their way up through the field, even if they do have a bit of a shoddy qualifying. You know, there's always that chance that they can make their way up towards the top end. Of course, this is really just the evaluation race. There is no safety car, there's no damage on. This is just trying to have a look at people's pure pace and obviously their racecraft, despite there being no damage on. So hopefully we can have a look and see who are the more cleaner ones that we can try and keep in within the League of Europe for this season. If anyone isn't too sure, as I said, we've got another preseason race for next week around Mexico. And hopefully there we'll be able to sort of gauge as to who will be whereabouts within each of the divisions for this coming season. But yeah, I mean, at this moment, to start off with, Brendan, I've got to say, is the one that is impressing me, if anything. So I think it's I'm intrigued on what the Irishman can do and see if he can maybe put challenge to Hyper, but I suppose we should wait and see. I'm seeing a lot of commotion going on in the chat that Larkin forgot to turn on his ERS because they're kicking too many people out.
Not surprised. It's going to be a busy couple of days, I would say, for Larkin after this evaluation race, trying to shuffle everything round and kick people out and all that kind of stuff, really, coming up to the start of the season. And yeah, I think I agree with you with the Brendan one. I think it is maybe a little bit of a surprise to see him this high up early on in the session. He partook in both of the social races, I believe, and I believe he had strong-ish quality pace, but he struggled a lot in the race, especially in Abu Dhabi. He did really struggle to keep the car on the road in the Abu Dhabi social race. So he'll definitely be one to keep an eye on race-wise. Whether it's just a quality thing or whether he can actually keep pace in the race is a completely different thing to keep an eye out for. Sneaky is going to be the next one to go for another run in a session with Brendan directly behind on the road. So we'll see if they find any improvement. Of course, track evolution is still a thing on these games, so the circuit does get that little bit better as the session goes on. You will find just a little bit more grip throughout the laps. So theoretically, they should find a bit more time. We'll wait and see whether they do or not is another thing. But Sneaky, so far, nice and neat through the first sector, through the final corner of the first sector, then turn number 5, and through the sector point, already found 2/10 of a second in the first sector. So Sneaky already finding time on the second run.
Yeah, no, without doubt, the Portuguese driver is looking to try and improve on that P7. As I said, that is his highest at this present moment. Of course, with the 13 drivers that are in. Malabitis has actually managed to get himself in, so that's good to see. So hopefully the other Portuguese driver can try and hopefully get himself up there or get in a car quickly and get a lap on the board as well. Just again, it's just so we can just gauge their pace as with the rest of this lobby. Sneaky 2.5 tenths up on his time through Sector 2, so the Ferrari driver is looking to try and get his way up in towards the top 3, I believe he would be, or close to Marin at least. So yeah, we'll see how he does fare on at the end of this lap. A lot of other guys are out on laps or on out laps. In fact, the entire lobby is either on a lap or on an out lap as well. So hopefully the 3 other guys that are on out laps can sort of get out of the way if they are impeding anybody. But Sneaky now making his way around the final corner to turn on that DRS and get his way up towards the line. Let's have a look and see what the Ferrari driver is going to do. It is going to be an improvement. It's only a 2/10 improvement, but up to 5th position up ahead of Dari in the Mercedes. So Sneaky, not a bad lap time, to be completely honest with you. Forza Brendan did invalidate on his lap time as well. But yeah, a few other guys, as I said, on laps currently. I'm just trying to see who the next one across the line is going to be. I can't exactly see because for some reason it's not letting me scroll through, but I believe it is a Red Bull of XL Dan coming up towards the line. Is it an improvement? And it certainly is. 30.104. Yep.
Yeah, good final sector from down there, and was on board with Brendan actually for his lap. He didn't invalidate, he actually just didn't find any time, interestingly, on his runners. Darius managed to find nearly half a second and make it a Mercedes 1-2. Well, have we never... Oh, it's been a while since we've seen that, haven't we, in real life and everything, but Dari now goes to 2nd position at the moment, as across the line, I think that was one of the other... Was that another car coming across the line? I didn't see who that was. That was Larkin, I think, doing his first one in the session, and Hyper's improved by 2/10 of a second to make his time now 3/10 clear at the top of the timesheet. So Hyper at the moment looking very strong in this qualifying session as it stands. Marine is coming to the line in the Alfa Romeo. In front of him, Supermug just a 30.7. Marine crosses, and now he goes onto the front row with a 30 flat. Still no one else in the 29s at the moment, but Marine very close to doing so. I think Evans will be next in the Ferrari. Can he find any more time on that 31.1? Crosses the line, only finds a 10th in just underneath and goes into P10, the 31 flat. So a few drivers really struggling to find the raw pace at the moment. A lot of drivers are quite close to each other, especially that pace at the moment between 2nd and 5th. Only a 10th really covering those 4 drivers. But then behind that, it's quite a split back to the rest of the field. Sully will be next in the Williams to cross the line to do his first representative run in the session. But it's only a 30.7, which for me, I think for Sully, considering the season he had last season, he only partook, I think, in 5 or 6 races, but had a couple of wins on the board in D2 last season. I was maybe expecting a little bit more early on from Sully.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. I'm very surprised that the Irishman's only sort of dared, to be completely honest with you. But, yeah, I mean, a lot more improvements, as you say. Dari, Marin making their way up. Dan as well, going up ahead of Brendan. Brendan, as I said, for some reason, not actually ending up improving on his lap time. So hopefully the other Irishman can try and get even higher than P5 and hopefully improve on that lap time. But like you say, nobody into the 29 still other than Hyper. Hyper probably showing that he should be in Lobby 1 opposed to Lobby 2, but again, the race is what really will tell it for the rest of us. As I said, there is a difference between the quali and the race, so I think this is going to make this a bit more interesting, to say the least. But yeah, I said everybody's pretty much done their laps. I believe Maledictus, the other Portuguese driver, is making his way, or has in fact just started his lap, so we'll stick on board with him throughout the entirety of this lap as well. So let's have a look and see how he does fare on a 22.2 in the first sector. Is actually a purple first sector for the Portuguese driver. Going to have DRS open now for Maledictus as he makes his way up towards the chicane in the middle of sector 2. I cannot remember the corner name of it, if I'm completely honest with you, but just after the 100 meter board, trying to carry as much speed as you possibly can and get the power early on as much as you can. A bit of a slide for the Portuguese driver, but keeps it on the road nonetheless. It's going to cost him a little bit of time, 49.9 into the second sector, and it's still saying it is a purple second sector. Don't think that is quite right, but I suppose we'll see at the end of this lap now through the hardest part of the track, the sector 3. Very, very difficult to try and get right, and very easy to overheat your tyres within this last part of the sector, but we'll see how he does fare on in this Alpine. Keeping it nice and tidy at the moment is the Portuguese driver. Now only 2 more corners left to go. This long sweeping left-hander, and then of course the hairpin right at the end of the circuit. Here we go now. Maledictus, can he get a very nice exit? He certainly can. DRS now wide open for Mala, and up towards the line he comes. Is he going to be in the 29s? He certainly is. A 29.933, the second one into the 29s goes the QVR driver, so very nicely done for him indeed. And yeah, Maledictus now up into P2.
Yeah, lovely lap for Maledictus, and considering as well that's him joining late into the session, that's his first run in this qualifying session. That is a pretty good banker to put down for Maledictus. Well, I don't think he quite has enough time to get back in and then get back out again for another run, so that might be it for Maledictus' session. But either way, that is a good start for this evening, at least for the QDR drive. I think Slash is the next one to be on a lap. Brendan's gone out as well. Brendan and Siki gone out a little bit early. Sneaky's already invalidated their latest run, so they will not be improving. Brendan didn't quite catch what the first sector time was. I believe it was a 0.2 in the first sector. In fact, he just dipped into the 0.1s in the first sector, did Brendan. So good first sector from the Aston Martin driver. We'll see what they can do in the middle part of the lap. Have they been able to maintain the speed throughout the rest of this lap then as he dives into the chicane, cops over that curb, short shifts down into third actually before that chicane, and then short shifts up to fifth on the exit. So using a little bit lower gears than most people have been using through that corner, and it's maybe cost him a little bit of time in the middle part of the lap. It's still a 49.9, good middle sector, but not quite as fast as Maledictus in the middle part of the lap then, as Brendan comes through turn 11 now, takes a lot of curb on the inside, tries to square off the corner as much as possible. It's got the AlphaTauri of Supermug just in front on the road, who's on an outlap, but I don't think that's going to be costing him too much time, if any. It might just be more of a distraction than anything else. In fact, now he's definitely going to get held up there, and Supermug completely blocking Forza Brendan there at the end of his lap. So Brendan looked like he was on for maybe a couple of tenth improvement, but Supermug just unaware and completely blocking him at the end of the run.
Yeah, hopefully Supermug. Well, that's not good to see. Hopefully Supermug can try and get a little bit more aware. There are other drivers that are out on track that are trying to do laps as well. Slash comes across the line though, up into P3 for the other Alpine in third one now, up into the 29s as well. So we'll see if anybody else can now make their improvements, as a lot of people are now out on out laps. Supermug, of course, also being one on a lap as well. So right on board with the AlphaTauri driver and see how he can get on the 22.1 in the first sector, and that's a tenth and a bit up on his first sector time as well. So we'll see if he can maybe make a bit more of an improvement from that 30.7 that he's currently put on the board, but very sort of close. It's like they're all sort of split into different groups. You've got Hyper Ellen that's all the way at the top already, and then you've got Maledictus all the way down to, I would say, Forza Brendan, split by about 2 tenths, and that could have even been Forza Brendan at the top of that little group had he not gotten blocked. And then splitting from Forza Brendan, you've got Sneaky on his own, and then you've got sort of Luke all the way down to Larkin, just all sort of split under a tenth of a second between all of those guys, and then Evans and Timon, who are looking to try and make an improvement on their lap times as well, but still running on board with the AlphaTauri of Supermug and seeing if he can make that improvement on his time in that AlphaTauri, making his way now through the end of sector 3. And I'm not too sure if this is looking like it could be an improvement. I think it will be an improvement, but he's only got 2 more corners to go. Make that 1 more corner to go now out of the final corner. Can he get a good exit to get the traction out of there? He definitely does. Up towards the line comes Supermug. It's looking like it's an improvement, and it's up into P8 for the AlphaTauri driver.
Yeah, P8, but that's a weird final sector, unfortunately, for Supermug, because 49.9 by the end of the second sector looked pretty strong, but has only done a 0.5 in the final part of the lap, so that's quite a way off the fastest that we've seen so far. So I think Supermug may be struggling with overheating tyres potentially at the end of the run, or he's just running really no downforce at all, because he really struggled for pace in the very final part of the lap, which is a little bit weird to see. As we now continue on with runs, Evans has just improved by 4 tenths of a second to get a 30.6, puts them up into 10th position. I think I think it'll be Marine next across the line. Currently P4, can they dip into the 29s? No, they can't. I think they've invalidated their run, actually. So next will be Luke up to the line, currently 11th. Only P8 is another 30.1, so another driver very close, but Luke at the back of that train rather than at the front, so he's not quite where he would want to be in this session. Maledictus did get to the line with 2 seconds to spare for the start of his run, so Maledictus will be able to get another run in this session, so he's timed that to absolute perfection, which is good to see. We'll see if anybody else is close to the end of that. I think one of the Red Bulls is coming towards the end of a run. That will be Dan, currently P6 on the grid. He's only half a tenth up by the end of the second sector, so we'll see what the final sector is like for the Red Bull driver. He's been in the past very good at Paul Ricard as he crosses the line. Just find a bit more time, and he's the next person into the 29s. It's a 29.9 for Dan. He's always been fast around Paul Ricard, so again, not a surprise to see him at the front. So he'll definitely be a threat in the race. I think Hyper's invalidated, so they won't be improving, but nobody at the moment seems to be close enough, as Thimon's had a collision somewhere with Sully on this lap. So Sully's potentially been blocked on his run, and Thymon, I don't know what's gone on there, but Thymon, that grid pace penalty is not going to do him, well, any difference, because he's already last.
Yeah, that's a very strange one. Barry goes up into P2 though, up ahead of the QVR driver of Maledictus, a 29.881 for Barry. So very nicely done from him. That is Evans coming back into the pit. So the best he is going to be is in P11. I was about to ride on board with Hyper, but he's actually spun on his lap, so he's not going to be making an improvement. Sneaky is going to be the next one to make his way up towards the line. So we'll see what he can do as he makes his way around the final corner to activate that DRS. I believe he's actually going to be the final one to make his way up towards the line, as I believe everybody else has sort of done their laps, and that is Sneaky up into P9 with a 30.408 for the Portuguese driver. And like I said, I think that is qualifying all done and dusted, unless Larkin is on an improvement of a lap. It doesn't look as if he is. He has invalidated on his time. Is Marin maybe up on an improvement as well? He has also invalidated. So yeah, I believe that is everything for qualifying. Mercedes 1-2, I haven't been able to say that for about a year now. So yeah, Hyper and Dari out on top, and Maledictus right behind them, maybe going to try and make his way through the field.
Yeah, definitely going to be interesting to see. I think Hyper looked like the top dog in qualifying all the way through, didn't he? It didn't really look underfoot at any point. But Dari, a good lap at the end. Dari's always been good at quali. He was in D3 all the way through last season, so not a surprise to see them at the front. But yeah, crucial to remember that Malo only did one run in that session, and that last run he did make a mistake out of the chicane on the back straight, which is why he wasn't able to improve. So Malo, with only one run in the session, was able to get a 29.9, so he'll definitely be one to look out for. I'll just run you through the rest of the grid then. It's Dan ahead of Slash 4th and 5th, then Marine 6th. Brendan blocked on their last run, ends up 7th ahead of Luke, Sneaky and Supermug the top 10. Evans, Sully, Larkin and Thyman, your 14 drivers. Thyman 14th on the grid with a 5 players grid penalty. Will stay 14th, of course. So yeah, Hyper and Dari, maybe not a surprise to see him at the front, but a few people you've got to say out of position. I think especially Larkin. I think you've got to say Larkin's quite low down for where you would expect him to be.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. I'm very surprised that he's as low down as he is as well. I'm just going to quickly just turn you up a little bit on my side as well, just because I think it might be a little bit quieter than the game. But yeah, as I said, I'm very surprised the fact that Larkin is so low down in comparison to everybody else. I think technically is second to last. Well, no, not technically. He is second to last on the grid. So hopefully we can see him trying to merge up a little bit further up from the rest of the guys. I said, as you can see on your screens right now, that was supposed to be what the lobby was. But a few guys are saying that they weren't. Well, they didn't know that there was going to be a race for today for the evaluation race, and so now that has turned into about 15 people that are left on the grid from that. So yeah, I suppose that's what happens if you don't want to let us know that you're not turning up. Already attendance issues, which is a very good start. But we are going to be loading up into the race very, very soon. I'd expecting to be seeing a lot of guys try and start either on the mediums or the hard tyres. The softs really aren't viable anymore, even in just a race tyre at all. Obviously it'd be the best for the quali, but for the race, definitely not the one to go ahead with. But yeah, Mercedes on top, Hyper and Dari. I can only really sort of see Hyper win this race, but I'd be expecting the likes of Larkin, the likes of Sully, even Evans, from what he's looking like, pretty quick as well. I would have said those three, I'm looking for them to try and make their way through the field.
Yeah, definitely ones that I'm looking at as well. I think a few people we've got to look out for, maybe out of position, like we mentioned, Larkin in qualifying, maybe not that strong, but could be a bit different probably in the race. Sully as well, we haven't really seen much of him on this game. I don't think he's had the game for that long, so we'll have to wait and see what Sully can do from a bit further down the field as well. And of course, we've got to keep our eye on the new drivers like Supermug, of course, new to this league. And just looking at the tyre strategies as well, a lot of people would have watched the earlier lobbies and noticed that, like you mentioned, the softs really aren't a viable tyre at all, unless you're in an Aston Martin in lobby 1, in which case you could somehow make the hard soft work and be pretty decent at the end of the race, which I don't know how they managed that, but congratulations to them. Most drivers starting on the hards, don't think that's a surprise. Marine, Supermug and Thyman are the three on the medium compound tyre. I think maybe not a surprise to see Marine do that, I would say. He wants to maybe gain a few places early on, pit early, and then be in clean air. I think maybe is the thought. I think maybe the same for Supermug. Thyman, I think it's just confidence at the moment. I don't think he's confident enough maybe to start on the start, so he wants to start on the tyre that will be a bit easier now, and then he'll just have to deal with a hard tyre warm-up later on in the race.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. So I'm expecting a few of those guys that are on those mediums, as you said, Marine trying to maybe make his way through the field, like you say. Supermug and Thyman, I think they just want to try and get a bit of a better start, try and break away as much as they can. Again, we saw it in Lobby 1, where a few of the guys did the same thing. I say a few of the guys, Montana tried to do the same thing, and it didn't particularly work for him. So hopefully one of these guys that are in this lobby can try and make that work. But yeah, I mean, like you say, a few guys might even try and do the hard to soft that are starting on these hard tyres, but really the best option would be to do the hard medium. I'd expect around lap 14 to 16 we'd be seeing people make their pit stops, so we'll see how that goes on. Hopefully as well they don't get a stupid penalty, because if you do cross that white line ever so slightly on the right hand side, I mean literally inch perfect, then it can just give you a straight 5-second time penalty, which it's not particularly fair. I will admit, because I was one of them that also got that, but yeah, as I said, it's not particularly fair for the rest of the guys if they do get that, but hopefully nobody does, and everybody just line up in their grid spots, and we'll get this first evaluation race underway, Aidan.
Yeah, let's get it underway then. Larkin and Sully are the ones that have overshot their grid spots, which is why they've been disqualified at the very end. But then the red lights should come on now ahead of the drivers. Here they come. 5 red lights ahead of the 2 Mercedes on the front row. Very long hold, but they are out and away we go, and it's a very good start from Hyper. Well, miles clear by the time we get to turn 1. Maledictus down the inside of Dari, looking for that second position into turn 1. Can he get the move done? Down the inside, he's late on the brakes. He forces Dari out wide. Mala gets the move done, and Dan's going to capitalise on that one around the outside. Gets the move done. Forza Brendan's missed turn 2 there, had to cut across the inside, but not gained any positions from it by the looks of things. Marine, I think, has got ahead of Slash on those medium tyres. Obviously, better grip off the start. You would expect him to gain a few positions as further down. Super Mug running side by side with one of the Ferraris. Larkin and Luke at the back of the field. Luke's had a spin, unfortunately, so we were gassing up Luke at the start of this stream, and it's already gone horribly wrong for him. Not the best quality, and he's spun down to the back of the field, unfortunately, which is a real shame to see. But coming down the back straight, there goes Marine down the inside of Dari, who forced a little bit wide at turn 1 by Maledictus, has really put Dari out of all sorts, hasn't he? And he's dropped down 3 places in the space of half a lap.
Yeah, no, he certainly has. It's very surprising that he has sort of dropped down from that one. But yeah, a few other guys also trying to make their way side by side. Sneaky trying to get back past Supermark now for that P8 position, but just a slot behind the AlphaTauri driver. And really, it's all just sort of straight line running at the moment. Only Luke, unfortunately, caught out in a lap 1 incident. But other than that, it's all been relatively clean sort of throughout the entirety of the field. Hyper, as you said, an amazing getaway in comparison to those 2 guys that were behind him of Dari and Maledictus. Maledictus had a good start. Dari, unfortunately, has just been completely swamped up and already down into 5th position. So hopefully the Mercedes driver can try and make his way through. But this is what we were talking about, the difference between quali and the race. We're already seeing those differences go on ahead, as Sully having a bit of a spin as well. I don't know if that was contact with Larkin, but yeah, Sully now also having a spin now down into 13th position, and now battling with Luke for that 13th position. In fact, they're literally both just inside of each other, which is a bit interesting. Brendan gets the move done on Supermug, and Supermug has the spin out of turn number 2. So 3 drivers already going for a spin in the space of just 1 lap. And yeah, Sully and Luke also going at it, as Sully's also spent in the same place as Supermug. So not going very well for the Irishmen. Hopefully they don't retire from the session, because we do need to see what their pace is like. But yeah, as I said, not a very good start for both Luke and Sully, and of course also for Supermug. An absolute amazing start for Hyper, and I don't think it could get any better for him.
No, definitely couldn't. We'll have to look at ERS usage as well, of course. ERS is a lot more powerful on this game, but it does burn out a lot quicker as well. So you've got to be smart with how you save it. And at the moment, Hyper, with the 6th lead, has more ERS than any of the drivers behind him. So Hyper doing a good job in the lead at the moment. Mallet already down to below 50% ERS by the time we get midway through lap 2. So Mallet using quite a bit to try and stay with the Mercedes in front. Feynman already with a 3-second time penalty, only on lap 2. So he's been off the track a few times already at the start of this race, which is a shame to see. Seeing a bit further down, it is Dari that's going to be the cork in the bottle by the looks of things. Down in 5th position, he's already dropping out of DRS range to Marine in front. So, like you mentioned, the quali pace was great from Dari, but in the race at the moment, in the early phases on those hards, Dari's not looking as comfortable in that Mercedes. He'll have Slash and Forza Brendan fairly close behind fairly soon, you would say, as well. Was further down the field, Larkin and Thyman going side by side into the final corner. Thyman holds the place. Larkin stays in 11th for the time being. 34.2, fastest lap of the race for Hyper, which is a pretty decent lap considering the tyres they're on, as Mala has a big old snap of oversteer out of turn number 2, and that might just put him out of DRS range. If that does, that gives a great opportunity to Dan in 3rd, who could have a run on the Alpine. We'll see as they come through turn 6. The detection point is just before the kink of turn 7. Through that turn 6 corner they come. Mala's just going to hold on to DRS range, but already he's slipping out of the clutches of the Mercedes.
Yeah, no, without a doubt, Malan needs to try and keep himself in that DRS of Hyper. But yeah, Darren looking a little bit more fierce in comparison to Maladix is trying to sort of put pressure on Hyper as well. So Malan may need to try and keep an eye on behind as opposed to trying to get past Hyper out in front. Marin still not really making up any inroads. He did obviously move up into fourth position, but not looking to try and get past Dan at the moment. And Darry has caught himself back up within the DRS of those top four guys as well. Not only that, a little bit further down, Timon is starting to lose time as well to the rest of those guys. He's now starting to become a bit of a corker bottle for Larkin. As I said, Larkin trying to go down the inside of Timon through turn number, I believe that's turn number 11, but does still, well, those both still side by side at the moment. Larkin trying to go around the outside of the Alfa Romeo, and I think he might even get this right. They're still both side by side. Some very good battling between the pair of them. Of course, teammates last season, now both still going side by side. Timon with no assists as well, doing a very good job, but just could not keep Larkin behind. Very good driving between the pair of them. But of course, Timon's now not going to have the DRS. Larkin should be the one with DRS, but Timon without any DRS, but just getting a slipstream on Larkin. Still so close to the back of the Red Bull driver, but has to back out of that one. Again, very good battling between the pair of them. But with all of that battling, it's good for us, but it's not good for them because look how much time that's now costed them. Larkin 2 seconds behind the rest of the guys. And as I was saying about Darry, keep him within DRS, he's starting to lose it once again. It's just within that first sector he's managing to sort of claw it back in. But after that, it just can't seem to. I don't know if it's just his straight line speed or what, but you can just already see how much time he's losing in comparison to those top four guys.
Yeah, just not looking as confident at the moment on those hards. As he's just a little bit kind of scared to go on the throttle out of some of these corners. He's not putting the power down as Slash now with the time penalty in P6, so he's struggling a little bit as well to keep the car on the road. But yeah, it's a train all the way down to ninth. Like you say, that battle for Larkin, not what he needed for this race. He's now completely on his own pretty much with no DRS help, and we know how strong DRS can be around this circuit. We'll see if Larkin can make any inroads on the drivers in front in the final part of the lap and the first part of the lap. If you can make some sort of inroad, then that's a good indication of what Larkin's pace is. But if he just continues to fall back, then you've got to say that Larkin is already maybe a little bit slower than the train in front. We'll keep an eye on that gap as Darry is now teetering on the edge of losing DRS. In fact, I think through the detection point, he might have just been out of it through that detection point there before the penultimate corner. We'll see down the pit straight. Yep, Darry's not got the help of DRS, so Darry going to be under a little bit of pressure. I say that, but Slash likewise is kind of struggling to keep up with Darry at this point. So if Slash needs to get closer, or Brendan needs to hope that Slash loses DRS to the back of the Mercedes, and then Brendan can make the move on the Alpine, and then potentially the Mercedes the lap after that.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I believe that Timon as well, still trying to close up to the back of Larkin. Larkin's now starting to lose time from the rest of those guys, those top 9, all within that one DRS train, only just hanging on by a thread. And look at this as well. Marin's starting to now lose time to those top 3 guys on those medium tyres. So those mediums already, I think, starting to take effect. As I see that is, I believe, Evans or Sneaky. No,
Yeah.
it was Evans, sorry, yeah. Did just reset to track, which I just caught, which is a bit interesting. But Evans, yeah, having that spin out of turn number 6, I believe that is. So very unfortunate for the Ferrari driver, now down into 12th position and joining obviously the likes of Supermug and Timon and Larkin, of course, all now trying to battle for that P9 position. So now 2 trains forming, one for the lead of this race. In fact, 3 trains, shall I say, because Darry again dropping out of DRS from those top 4 guys. Yeah, Hyper down to Marin, Darry down to, I believe, Sneaky, and then Larkin all the way down into Evans as well. Luke and Sully, unfortunately, still just sort of riding around at the back at the moment. As I said, hopefully they don't retire so we can keep an eye on what their times would be throughout the entirety of the race as well. And yeah, I think it's a bit interesting of what's going on as Marin, like I said, is really now starting to lose time from those top 3 guys. Those mediums, I think, are definitely starting to go off for him.
Yeah, it looks like they're potentially a little bit overheating because he's losing a lot of time in the final part of the lap. Didn't get DRS down the pit straight, but DRS down the pit straight isn't all that powerful anyway, so might not cost him, but he is just teetering on the edge of losing DRS completely. His Hyper's dropped it. The race leader has dropped it out of turn number 2. That is a real shame for Hyper. Had such a strong quality and was looking comfortable in the lead of this race, but just a small mistake through 2 when he's dropped the car. That is our 3rd driver that has spun at turn number 2. It's been a bit of a pain point tonight in the race, has turn number 2. So he's now down to 8th position. He's not out of it just yet. He can recover some of these places. We'll just see how hot the tyres are and how quickly they can recover as Supermug, the next driver, to get a time penalty. So he's now on the back of Thyman trying to recover from his earlier spin in the race as well. I think that will be an easy move for the AlphaTauri. He should breeze past Thyman down this back straight, and he does so up into 10th position, then past the Alfa Romeo. And I think Evans is going to try and sneak a move down the inside as well. Not quite close enough on the brakes, so backs out of it. But yeah, that changes the dynamic of the race. Maledictus now takes over the lead with Dan in second position. They are pretty much identical on ERS usage now. Marine back up to third, the lead runner on the mediums, but a bit of maybe a sigh of relief you've got to say for Mala and Dan, because on pure pace alone, you've got to say by the time we got to the pit stop phase, you would have expected Hyper to have dropped those guys behind. Instead, he's now fallen back after that spin.
Yeah, no, without that. So, yeah, Maledictus and Dan, they can sort of just, as you said, breathe a sigh of relief. They can just sort of go at their own pace now. They don't have to try and keep up with Hyper, but Dan does need to try and keep up with Maledictus. And if anything, I think Mala was being helped by Hyper being in front of him because of that DRS, but now Dan with the DRS and Mala with no DRS, I think it's going to make that a little bit harder for Mala to try and defend from him. Marin, by the way, yeah, now completely losing DRS to those top two guys, so now Marin's going to be coming under pressure from Dari as Dari's caught up to the back of the Alfa Romeo driver. Dari, I think we might see him opting to go for a move on the back straight, or the next straight, shall I say, sorry, the next DRS straight. And I think Marin's not really going to have an answer for the Mercedes driver. Will stick on board with them as Evans did just get past Thyman in the end, so now Thyman down into 12th position, of course with that penalty in his hand as well. But here we go, DRS is now going to be wide open for the German, and already you can see how much quicker in a straight line he is in comparison to Marin. There's been another spinner, that is Sully once again out of turn number 2, but Dari now up into 3rd position, up ahead of Marin. And now, yeah, as I said, Marin's tyres definitely are going off, so we might be seeing the Dutchman make a pit stop very soon. Slash, I think even might try and go for some sort of move as Thyman has gone up ahead of Supermug and Evans, which is very weird, and got a 3-second time penalty on a straight line, so that was even more interesting.
Yeah, I think he just completely outbroke himself for the chicane and had to go and miss the chicane, which is why he's picked up that penalty and gained those places. He's given them back, but yeah, just completely outbroke himself for the chicane and ended up missing the chicane completely, which is why he gained all those positions. So, as I think that we just had a spin, yet Supermug's gone for another spin in the AlphaTauri coming out of turn 11 this time, so a bad race is getting worse, unfortunately, for the AlphaTauri driver. There's another yellow flag. That is Thyman that spun the corner after, so a few drivers really struggling to keep the car on the road in this race. That will bring Luke back into contention after his early contact on the first lap of the race, so he'll start to regain some of those places he lost very early on. As now on to lap 8, Dan is right up behind the rear wing of the Alpine of Maledictus. So you've got to say at this point in the race, Dan's looking a little bit stronger than Maledictus. He's tucked right up behind. We'll have to see what Dari's pace is now that he's in a bit of clean air and he's not going to get held up by the medium run of Marine. Can he close in on this top 2? Were the top 2 being dragged along by Hyper, or was Dari just genuinely slow and caught out in the early couple of laps? I think the pace in the first sector suggests that Dari does have genuine speed at this point in the race, at least. He maybe struggled early on with the tyres a little bit cold and the weight of the car, but at this point in the race, at least, Dari does have some pure speed. Maybe Maledictus and Dan were just being helped out quite a lot in the early phase of the race by Hyper, who was maybe dragging them along a little bit.
Yeah, no, that could definitely be a possibility. I think it's more in towards Sector 2 and Sector 3, though, is where Dari was losing his time. You could just see, I know Dan had DRS onto the back of Maledictus, but you could see Dari already lost about a tenth and a bit just behind Dan alone. So let's have a look and see what it is in the Sector 2, was it through Sector 3, and see if he does gain any sort of time. I think it was about 1.5 when they crossed the line, as Dari went very wide, actually, coming out of turn number 10 from there. So, yeah, I think might have just lost a little bit of time through that one. But yeah, Dan, I think also made a little bit of a wobble because he's now dropped out a little bit from Maledictus. He was all over the back of him and now down to about 5.5, 6 tenths of a second behind the Alpine driver. But again, Maledictus, I think he's just sort of running his own race at the moment, just taking it nice and calmly and just making sure that he does just try and hold Dan at arm's length to make sure he doesn't pass him in the end. And yeah, you are right in what you're saying. Dari, I think, is the one that is looking the quickest out of the lot of them at the moment. Dari has gained about 2 tenths just in that last lap alone on these top 2 guys, so it might have been Hyper just sort of helping them out up along a little bit. But I think if that is the case, Dan is the one that is looking the quickest out of the lot of them, so I think Dan needs to try and get the move done on Maledictus, as Luke getting past Supermug and in fact both side by side with each other shall I say, but I'm not going to turn our attention to this because Dan so close now to the back of Maledictus, and I think we might even see a move coming down towards the end of the straight. Just keep on board with it. Is Dan going to try and attempt to move on Maledictus? I don't know if he's going to be close enough in the end, towards the end of the straight. No, he certainly isn't, but a little bit further behind, Marin has actually lost 2 free places in relation to everybody else. In fact, Marin going very, very slowly. I'm not too sure what that was about because there's no damage on, so I don't know why he's just sort of backed off and let everybody through, which is very, very strange.
Yeah, very strange from Orion. He did just kind of... I was saw it in the background. I thought he was moving to defend from Slash. Slash was a few tenths back, so I thought it was weird that he was maybe trying to break the toe. Yeah, then he's just got out of the way of everybody, which is very bizarre. So I have to see what Marine does here. If he does retire in the pit lane, then I do fear that it's going to be maybe bye-bye to Marine in this league for this season, I think, if he does retire in the pit lane, unfortunately. On this lap, though, Darry's now starting to lose a bit of time. I think it's fairly close in pace at the moment between Maledictus and Dan. I think if Dan did get the move done on Maledictus, I think Dan would be able to maybe pull them along a little bit more. Dan does look the faster of the top 2. Darry, I think, is probably similar pace to Maledictus at the moment, but just with Dan having DRS behind, that's making the gap look bigger than it potentially could be at this point in the race. We'll wait and see when they pit whether anything changes in that sense. As Marine, I think, has just let Larkin go down the pit straight. No, actually, Larkin's just passed Marine down the pit straight, so Larkin now moves up into 8th as Luke and Supermug continue their battle, and Luke is now up into 11th place past the AlphaTauri now, so continuing his work back through the field to see where he can end up in this race. Now with Marine out the way, that gives free run for Slash and Forza Brendan to now have a go at the back of Darry to see what they can do in this race. Of course, Slash the only one really in this front pack with a time penalty at the moment at least. Brendan in 5th, Sneaky still holding on as Dan does now go for the move on Maledictus at the end of the straight. Easy move down the inside. Maledictus decided not to defend it. So Dan now into the lead. So now we can see whether Dan can stretch his legs a bit at the front of the field or whether he will likely or maybe he will start to struggle just like Mala did when Hyper fell out the way. So we'll wait and see what Dan can do. Dan did have a little bit of ERS in reserve that he has just burnt down that back straight to build the gap a little bit to keep him safe to the Alpine. So we'll see what they can do, but if early pace is anything by it, you've got to say Dan, before that point, looked the stronger of the two.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I know what Dan is like on his tyres. I don't know how he arrests them to a way that he keeps them nice for him. I don't know how he does it, but he does. He is very good on his tyres, and I would say Dan, I think that's now starting to show a bit more. Despite being on now coming on to lap 11 out of 27, Dan with the fastest lap of the race now as well. Did burn a little bit of his ERS, but I think you can start to see now how much he has taken care of those tyres to now it's given him a massive advantage up ahead of Maledictus and Darry, and you can already see how much he's pulled up a gap of that as Hyper once again spinning around at turn number 2. He's now going to be put behind, I believe will actually go behind Larkin and potentially even Marin. So let's have a look at that. Take a quick look at that as Marin actually going into the back of him. Larkin now side by side with Hyper coming through turn number 5. Is he going to be able to keep that move on him as well? Still both side by side, but I believe Hyper has got that move done. Has a little bit of a wobble through that. Larkin still both side by side. Hyper does completely cut the corner. Now you've also got Marin trying to go for a move on Larkin. Very good battle between all of these guys now from 7th down to 9th, and I believe Marin might actually get the move done on those medium tyres up into 7th position. Did not leave Larkin in that room, but got that move done anyway, so nicely done for Marin. I'm still not too sure what had happened earlier on when he sort of just pulled over to the side for everybody else, but I think Larkin trying to maybe eye up an attack on Marin once again, because those medium tyres, as I said, are starting to go off, and I won't be surprised if we see Marin, Supermug and Timon all make their way into the pits at the end of this lap, because those medium tyres are, well, they look like they're destroyed.
Yeah, they will be on their best at this point, aren't they? Marine's really struggling at this point in the mid part of the laps to just keep the car on the road. Larkin faster in the final parts of the lap, but just got caught out by Hyper's spin there. He had to, I think, have to get out of the way and give the place back. He might have overtaken through a yellow flag, which is why he had to let Hyper go just before they got onto the back straight. And you can see Larkin almost running into the back of the Alfa Romeo, through the final corner. They're now also being caught by Evans, who's recovering from his earlier spin. So Evans closing in on the back of these guys fairly quickly. Luke isn't too far behind either, so they're all starting to close in on one another for that 7th place battle at the moment. The top 6, then, the only ones that have got away unscathed so far in this race, they're still going. And you've got to say, Dan is doing exactly what I said he would do. He's kind of leading the way at the front and pulling Mala along with him. He's got a comfortable 7th, 10th of a second gap, and they're now starting to drop the train behind for 3rd. It's now nearly 2 seconds to get back to Dari. I think Dari's potentially a little bit frustrated that Mala didn't defend the move, because if he did, Dari could have been on the back of them. Now Dari's just kind of getting left in the dust by the 2 leaders.
No, not only that, he's now going to be put under pressure from Slash and Brendan, but I'm still right on board with Larkin as Hyper John going down the inside of Larkin, coming up in towards the end of the chicane, and they're both still side by side. Larkin's going to have the inside for the exit of that chicane and does maintain that position. The Red Bull versus the Mercedes as well, and Larkin is the one that comes out on top, still being held, of course, with the DRS from Marin, and obviously the slipstream as well from the Alfa Romeo. But yeah, as I said, Dari, well, as you were saying as well, Dari very frustrated that Maledictus couldn't really sort of defend the position, because now, like you say, he's now going to be coming under pressure, an immense amount of pressure from Slash and Brendan. The only sort of good thing for him is that Slash has a penalty, as Hyper, I believe, spinning out of turn number 10 as well. So yeah, it's not going well for Hyper. 3 spins already in the space of 12 laps. Not a good sign for him whatsoever. Still not seeing any medium runners make their way into the pits yet, interestingly enough. I would have thought we would have at least seen one. As I say that though, Supermug is into the pits, so our first pit stopper of the race more than likely will go on a set of the hard tyres to go to the end of the race, and I wonder if we'll start to see the other medium runners maybe follow suit in the next lap or two, and I assume we might even see a couple of the hard runners maybe make their way into the pits very soon as well.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if maybe one of them, maybe someone like Sneaky at the back of the train might come in for an early stop and just try and undercut the drivers in front. We'll wait and see what they do. Slash is quite close to Dari this time around, so is Slash going to go for the move on the Mercedes? Yes, he is. Slash very fast in a straight line. Is that Alpine? He breezed past the Mercedes. We're not really using an ERS at all, so that suggests to me that Slash is running quite low wings in this race. He's got a very good car in a straight line, and he made that look ridiculously easy. So Slash now up into 3rd position, but I don't think anybody in this train, 3rd, 4th, 5th or 6th, really has an answer for our leaders. In fact, Sneaky's going for a move on Brendan. Brendan's made a mistake in the chicane, and Sneaky's capitalised on it immediately and is up into 5th position. But Sneaky with no ERS, getting that move done on Brendan, that means this train probably is now going to have split up with Sneaky making that move and Brendan making that mistake. So it's now 2 by 2 by 2 at the front of the field by the looks of things. Down to Maledictus, Slash and Dari, and then Sneaky and Falls and Brendan at the moment as it stands. We'll see if anybody can get back within DRS range. But yeah, top 2 just kind of driving away at the front of the field at the moment. Dari didn't have pace, then he did have pace, and now he doesn't have pace again. So he's kind of fluctuating back and forth at the moment on those hard compound tyres. Still none of them into the pit lane. I think Marine's decided to come in. Yeah, Marine is in, but he's got a 5 second for speeding in the pit lane. And Larkin is the first hard runner in. He's followed in at the end of lap 13, I believe, to go onto the medium compound tyres. So an early stop for Larkin, I think for him, just to get out of trouble, really, because he's just kind of been fighting other cars pretty much all the way through this race. I think he just wants a bit of clean air.
Yeah, no, for sure. And the good thing for him as well is that because Moran got that, because Moran got the 5 second penalty, he gets to serve it, but he didn't actually have to serve it, which is interesting to say the least. I don't know if he actually did just speed into the pit lane then or what, but
I think so.
Yeah, it must have been. So yeah, as I said, Marine and Larkin both making their way in. Looking back though, Dari now going back for that move on Slash, and Maledictus so close to the back of Dan as well for that lead of the race, so might have to turn to that very, very soon. But yeah, Dari now back up into 3rd position. The Slash has a little bit of a wobble coming out of that chicane. Sneaky might now try and go for a move on the QVR, on the relentless driver. The QVR driver is the one trying to make the move, shall I say. And I don't think Sneaky's going to be able to get any sort of move done, as I say that. Coming up towards turn number 10, is he going to get the move done potentially under braking? No, he is not. So the Ferrari's just going to have to stay behind the Alpine for now. But yeah, I mean, Slash with that wobble now drops him out of DRS and Dari. Lots of mistakes going on for what would be an equivalent to Division 2. It makes that very, very interesting to me, to be honest with you, Aidan.
Yeah, it definitely does. As Dari, I think, chose that opportunity to come into the pit lane. He realised that they had dropped back. It's given him a bit of free space. He may as well come in rather than sit and wait for any potential issue. So the Mercedes driver into the pit lane, and Forza Brendan has followed in from the back of that train. So like I said, I think somebody at the back of that train needs to come in early and try and undercut. Brendan is the one to do so. And I think Darry's doing this as well to see if he can get back within range of Dan and Maledictus in the second half of this race. If he can, you've got to say that Darry does have enough pace to keep up with them. Whether he can challenge them is another thing, but he does potentially have the pace to at least be able to keep up with them if he can get back within their range. So may as well try it, see if he can get closer to the top two, and if not, he can then just try and solidify third in this race. Brendan, unfortunately for him, has come out right behind Thyman. He will have to warm up those mediums, but he'll have to try and stay within DRS range of the Alfa Romeo to get the move done, as we're looking at Maledictus retaking the lead from Dan there. So, yeah, Maledictus back up into the lead of this race, as I think Darry's just had a little bit of a wobble somewhere. He's lost a bit of time in the first part of the sector to hyper in front, abnormal for someone who was warming up their tyres. It was quite a lot. So, yeah, I think Darry maybe just having a little bit of a wobble on those cold tyres.
Yeah, as I said, for anyone that's of course new to this F1 game, shall we say, when you come out of the pits, your tyres are not warmed up whatsoever. They are frozen cold, and you need to try and warm them up. So that's why you probably see a lot of drivers when they come out of the pits are struggling to make any sort of gains when they come out of the pits. So, which suggests it's very difficult to try and go for an undercut on someone. But if they do, it's a lot easier to try and get it done. As Maledictus now, I think actually the first victim that does fall for that 5-second penalty. Him and Dan both made their way into the pits, and unfortunately for Mala, he's going to have to serve that 5 seconds. So it's going to put him, well, very far away from Dan, and Dan and Darry are the ones that are looking like they'll be battling for this lead of the race. Unfortunately for Mala, he does get those tyres changed. And yeah, you can see how much further back he is from Dan. So very unfortunate for the Portuguese driver. Not much that we can do about it. The Hyper is also into the pits for his stop. Darry, where is he coming out in relation to Mala? In fact, completely cleared him. And in relation to Dan, he's about 2.5 seconds behind. So that gap really did stay the same. However, Dan is on cold tyres. So is he going to be able to make any inroads whilst Dan is on those cold tyres? It's looking like Dan might have already started to come up to speed with them, but a little bit further up ahead, Slash and Sneaky very close to the back of each other. Slash trying to defend from Sneaky as there's yellow flags further down. I think someone has had a little bit of a spin. That might have been Sully, I believe, or Luke.
Ryan.
One of those two. Or Ryan having that spin. So unfortunate for the Alfa Romeo driver. And once again having another spin actually now as well for. In fact, that's Thyman that spun as well. So both of the Alfa Romeos having a bit of a bad one to say the least. But yeah, there's battle for the lead of this race. Slash and Sneaky, of course, them as well as Evans, Thyman and Sully, the only ones yet to make their pit stops at the moment. Luke getting past Sully as well down that DRS straight. And I'm assuming we'll probably see Slash and Sneaky into the pits at the end of this lap, trying to go for an overcut. Is anyone going to get that 5-second penalty? No, they do not. But Slash does have that penalty to his name already with that 3 seconds as well. I think he might actually have 6 seconds. I'll have to check that in just a second. But yeah, those guys making their way in. Evans also following in, so trying to avoid double stack. Evans, in fact, actually speeding into the pit lane as he comes in. So he will have that 5 seconds to his name. Yellow flags once again, and that is Thyman once again at the exit of that long right-hander of turn number, I think that's actually turn 11, not turn 10, so my apologies. But yeah, out of turn number 11, unfortunately having that spin. Darry setting the fastest lap of the race and showing his pace as well. But it is Dan that is still leading this race.
Yeah, Dan comfortably in the lead now after that penalty for Mala, and now Brendan trying to get the move done on Sneaky, who's on cold tyres coming out of the pit lane. So Brendan trying to work that undercut to good use down the inside for turn number 3. Sneaky's going to have to back out of that one. I think cold tyres, you won't really have the tools to fight for that one, as Sully picks up a time penalty a bit further down the field. Slash coming out of the pit lane on cold tyres as well, right in front of his Alpine teammate Maledictus. So Mala's going to try and get this move done as quickly as he can on his teammate. That's not going to be a contest at all. In fact, it's almost passed before they even open. DRS have got a yellow flag, is set to one. That is Thyman again, who's gone for another spin. Brendan now thinking about potentially looking at Slash. Slash still having to warm up his tyres a little bit, so Brendan going to have to try and capitalise now if he wants to get the move on in the Alpine before the train really starts to kick in. And in fact, Slash a bit of a wobble out of the chicane, but Brendan deciding against going for the move and sits behind the Alpine for the time being. So running order then, Dan currently leads the race. I think Dan's using a lot of ERS on this lap to go for the fastest lap. Darry comfortably now in second place with that early stop, and Maledictus, that's about that penalty now down to third. It's now up to Maledictus to see whether he can catch that gap to Darry in front, who's not got the aid of DRS from anyone. It's going to be a tall order. He could catch it, but it's quite a big gap for him to build up in these last few laps, especially when they're on fairly similar aged tyres. As further down, Thyman, I don't know why he's still going on those medium tyres. Still hasn't pit yet. He's done 16 laps on a set of mediums that he's spun 4 times on. By this point, I think they're screaming enough. This is definitely a very weird strategy from the Alfa Romeo. As Dan does the 32.9 and has burnt all of his ERS out. So he's done exactly what I said he'd do, use all of his excess ERS to go for the fastest lap, and now just solidify the win that looks pretty comfortable.
Yeah, I think Dan, unless he makes a mistake as well, or Dari somehow gets a rocket up his arse, I think Dan has taken the win on this race from the looks of things. But it's still very good effort from Dari as well. And Maladit is just a shame that I don't know why it's bugged that way in the game, but that 5-second penalty just, well, it's cost him a chance of having a win against Dan as well. So, yeah, very unfortunate for Mala, but again, that's just what it is in the game. Unfortunately, can't do anything about it. But Slash looking to maybe try and go past his teammate as well. I don't think he will try and go for it on this straight, but maybe within the next couple of laps, because he's got 1 lap fresher tyres as well towards the end, it might be a bit beneficial in comparison to Maledictus as Sneaky now in 6th position, picking up a 3-second time penalty. I'm just going to have a quick check on the penalties as Evans does pass Supermug. And yeah, you can already see it. Moraine has 14 seconds of penalties, time and 15 seconds of penalties. So the Alfa Romeo is having their own little competition as to see who can get more penalties. As Supermug having a spin at the chicane as well. But yeah, the 2 Alfa Romeos looking to see who can try and get the most amount of penalties between the pair of them. 6 seconds for Slash, 5 seconds for Evans for speeding in the pits, and the rest of the guys are Sneaky, Larkin, Hyper, Sully and Supermug, all with 3 seconds of penalties to their names as well. As I said, everyone other than Timon have made their pit stops as well, and I'm really surprised we have not seen Timon come into the pits as of yet. I think he just still wants to try and reminisce of keeping with the rest of the trains, or he might be trying something different and going for a set of the soft tyres potentially.
Potentially, but I think with the state of his mediums right now, I doubt that that's really beneficiary for him to go for the softs. We'll wait and see what he does. In fact, he stays out for another lap as Hyper. As you would expect, Hyper, fastest lap of the race, not really a surprise considering his quali pace and his early pace in this race, but he is obviously, after those multiple spins, way down the field in 10th position at the moment. Everybody kind of just running in a train now, just trying to like save ERS and maybe go for a move a bit further on in the race, just trying to save their tyres just that little bit. Dan, just a couple of tenths a lap faster than Dari at the moment, about 3 tenths a lap faster. Maledictus is about the same to Dari, so Maledictus is starting to close back in on Dari, who was the first to pit onto those medium compound tyres. So if there is any overheating, Dari is likely the first one to come across it, and Maledictus will be dragging Slash, Brendan and Sneaky along with them at the moment. Larkin currently holds 7th, but I've been running on board with Larkin. Larkin, his pace isn't too bad. The problem for Larkin is that he has a good lap, 1 lap, and then the next lap he's a little bit all over the place. So I don't think Larkin's quite really within the comfortable range at the moment on this game to push flat out for the majority of the race like the 6 drivers in front of him at the moment. He is just struggling to keep control of the car. The problem for Larkin in this race is that he's not particularly been that fast, and he's not been fast enough to keep up with the top 6 in front, but everybody behind him has made some sort of mistake in this race, so he's just kind of ended up in the middle ground where he's not made a mistake but he's not had the pace, so he's just kind of on his own at the moment in P7. I think his only challenge for the rest of this race is to try and keep out of penalty range to Luke, who's the only one of the bottom half of the field not with a penalty, still recovering from his contact on the first lap of the race. His next target is Moraine, and I think Moraine again proving he obviously backed off down that back straight for some bizarre reason, but even without that, this strategy for Moraine's just not worked. The medium hard just isn't the fastest one around here. I think the tyre warming process for the hards coming out of the pit lane just takes too long, and you lose too much time getting on a fresh set of hard compound tyres that it's just not worth going for the strategy. So, and finally, end of lap 19, Thyman has decided enough is enough on those medium tyres. He's into the pit lane for what should be a set of soft compound tyres, but Thyman at this point is way off the back and I think just trying things to see what works.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. There's actually someone else that hasn't even made a pit stop yet of XL Sully. He is still yet to also make a pit stop on those hard tyres, so I assume we might see him in at the end of this lap or the end of next lap before the set of soft tyres as well. And I was just riding on board with Slash to see if he was going to make a move on his teammate of Maledictus, but yeah, Slash is just happy just saying where he is at the moment. Forza Brendan, of course, without a penalty to his name as well. I don't know if he's probably on like 1 or 2 warnings or any warnings, shall I say, but I know Brendan's usually one that's known for not really getting any penalties and just keeping it clean on track, and it's looking like he's going to do that again for today as well, getting probably past Slash with that as well. Interesting thing to note, Mala's catching up to Dari, but Dari's not catching up to Dan, so Dan's looking like he's going to be clear from Dari, but at the same time we could be seeing Dari join at the front of this train with Mala, with Slash, with Brendan and with Sneaky, turning that from, of course, the 4-car to the 5-car train. And he's just looking like he's got a lot more pace, shall I say, than Dari. Are we going to maybe see Maledictus go for that P2 ahead of the German, as I said, for the end of this race? Because it's looking like the Portuguese driver is going to be attempting to go for a move on him.
Yeah, it definitely looks the way, doesn't it? I think you've got to say, without that 5-second penalty for Maledictus, the two drivers that have looked the fastest in this race have been Mala and Dan. They've been consistently the fastest in race pace, so it's not really a shock, I think, to see Dan pull away and Mala catch up to Dari. I think Dari just in that position because of Mala penalties and the early pit stop. So Dari's still solid pace, but yeah, just not quite fast enough to keep up with the likes of Dan and Maledictus at this point in the race. They are just the two fastest as it stands in this lobby. Dari, his target, I think, will probably just be to fall behind Mala and then solidify that third place position as Forza Brendan's just pick up a penalty. So now Dari doesn't really have a threat for that third place position if he does drop behind Maledictus, because everybody behind him now has a penalty. I was just looking at race directors, by the way, to look at penalties. Brendan picked up 2 warnings in the first 3 laps of the race. So I'm amazed he's got this far without picking up the third warning, but he's just picked it up, unfortunately. Dan, in typical Dan style, does not have a single warning, and neither does Maledictus. So while they're both the 2 fastest drivers on the track, they've neither of them picked up a warning either. So both of them looking very, very strong. And you've got to say, if there's anybody that we saw that maybe particularly struggled in Lobby 1, they could be potential candidates to have a go in Lobby 1 next time out in Mexico.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a possibility, and I reckon we could potentially see them, obviously, if there's not going to be enough people within Lobby 1 for next week as well. I'll tell you what, though, we've got a very good candidate for Lobby 3 for next week of QRT Timon, all the way down in 14th, picking up penalties left, right and centre, and I think he's actually on the verge of getting disqualified because of the amount of penalties that he has picked up. But I'm right on board with Hyper as he's side by side with Marin, making his way in towards turn number 1 as well. Marin just has to back out of that one, not much that he can particularly do, and Hyper now up into 9th position, trying to follow suit with Luke. Luke, by the way, he's keeping at a nice steady pace at the moment. He is catching up to the back of Larkin, and Larkin, as I said, just completely losing pace to those other top 6 guys. But yeah, I don't know what it is of Larkin. This is not... I'm very surprised that he has dropped off as much as he has. Obviously, the DRS for the rest of those guys up in front is going to help, but at the same time, I'm really surprised at the pace that he's providing at the moment, down in 7th position, and well, potentially going to be losing 8th position from Luke. Although saying that, Hyper going for the move on Luke now for that 8th position. Of course, Hyper with that penalty, basically just sort of blocking Luke off from trying to get that jump on Larkin, or could potentially drag him along. But you can see Hyper's ERS in comparison to Luke. Hyper's got barely anything left. It's almost dry in the tank for his ERS. In comparison to Luke, who's still got a little bit of battery to play with if need be. And you can already see just on that straight line how much closer or how much quicker he is in comparison to Hyper. So I don't know if that was smart for Hyper to make the move, because that's just going to drop him back even further. But for Luke, I think he needs to try and get back past him ASAP if he wants a chance of jumping up ahead of Larkin. As saying that, Hyper has a bit of a wobble of one of the final turns in this final sector as well. So Luke just swoops straight back past, and you can already see it's dropped in 6 tenths back from where he was originally.
Yeah, there you go. That's just a shame for Luke. He's just kind of been held up in that, and Hyper with, I think, potentially his 5th or 6th half spin in this race. So Hyper has had great pace, but he's really struggling to keep the car on the road. We mentioned it at the start of quali that quali and race are a completely different animal in this game, and Hyper's proving that. Great quali pace, but can't keep the car on the road in the race at the moment. I'm a little bit surprised by Luke's pace as well. We came into this race like we mentioned at the start. I said I was keeping my eye on Luke. He was definitely one I was looking out for in this lobby to potentially be very good, as there's a spin for Hyper, and Orion's just run clean into the back of the Mercedes. He didn't ghost in time, so that's now put Luke completely on his own now in that 8th position. But yeah, Luke's pace at the moment is not particularly fast either. In fact, he's not really gained any time on Larkin in the last couple of laps. So a little bit surprised to see Luke struggling so much for raw speed as well. Larkin at the moment is running about 6 tenths per second a lap slower than the drivers in front of him in that train, and that's not just DRS doing that. So yeah, Larkin is just falling away, and Luke at the same pace is not catching. So a few drivers maybe not performing to the standard we expect of them in this hobby, and then some other drivers overperforming, you've got to say. Dari definitely one, I've got to say, he's been a bit of a surprise as Sully picks up another penalty. Dari was in D3 last season, was great in qualifying, but races never really went his way. He was kind of in around the 5th and 6th place in the championship by the end of the season, but so far he's accustomed himself really well in this race. He's done very well in the trains. He's running now clean on his own. He's now starting to match Dan's times in the lead of the race, although I wouldn't be surprised if Dan is just backed off at this point and is not at full pelt. Dari is just keeping Maledictus Maledictus at arm's length at the moment. It's just starting to dip within DRS range as the Alpine, but it's not going to be quite as easy for Mala to get this move done as I first thought. I thought Dari would just drop back into the clutches and get swamped, but at the moment Dari is just keeping the Alpine at arm's length. But for the first time, I think Maledictus is going to have DRS, and that could change the game a little bit.
Yeah, no, there's definitely an opportunity for Maledictus to go for this move on Dari. In fact, he hasn't actually got the DRS on Dari, interestingly enough, and he's almost dropped his teammate out of DRS. He had to burn quite a bit to try and catch up to the back of Dari. However, we might be seeing it on the next lap that Maledictus should be in DRS of Dari, just looking so much quicker. While I was saying that, I think Dan might have made a slight little mistake because Dari just caught him by about 3/10, just in that little chicane alone. So I think Dan, as I said, made a slight little mistake, but I don't think it's really going to cost him too much, especially being 3.5 seconds out in front already. So yeah, very well done from Dan so far. As Larkin has actually had that spin out of the chicane. So we were just talking about Larkin saying how he's not having that bad of a race at the moment, but he's now dropped down to back off this train. Luke now doesn't need to worry about trying to catch Larkin. He can just stay in 7th position. This might actually be able to see now if he does. If he can sort of keep on pace with the guys out in front of him, or with that DRS, we'll be able to properly see now if he is going to be either catching them or just sort of just staying there where he is at the moment, or if he's going to end up losing time to those guys out in front. But yeah, I don't know what's going on now because Dari is starting to catch up to Dan.
Yeah, very interesting. Don't know whether Dan's maybe overheating his tyres or not. Dan is starting to use a bit of ERS now as well. So whether Dan's maybe just pushed too hard early on the mediums and they're just starting to wear off for him, or he's just running too higher pressures and he's struggling with the overheating. Dari is, again, like he did on the hard compound tyres at the start, he struggled at the start of the stint for pace, and then by the time they got to the midpoint of the stint, Dari started to pick the pace up again. So it's kind of happening again now in this part of the race, as Dari's just starting to pick the pace up again in that Mercedes. And in fact, Mala's dropped back a little bit on this lap, so Mala not able to get within that DRS range. So I think it's looking more and more likely that Dari is going to hold on to that second place as it stands. But right, I think Hyper's had another moment, so make that 8 moments in this race now for the Mercedes driver, as Larkin will now have a run on the back of the Mercedes and should breeze past, although Larkin another one with no ERS in this race. Marine now passed on Luke, so again, Luke just struggling for pace at this point in the race. Marine now back past on the hard compound tyre compared to Luke on the mediums. You wouldn't expect the mediums to be slow at this point in the race. Luke's just struggled for pace. Ever since that contact on the first lap, he's just not really... The contact on the first lap cost him about 5 or 6 seconds, but he's now, well, the best part of 16 seconds off the back of Sneaky, and then there is a big old gap back to the leader of the race. So Luke's really struggled for pace in this race as well. And we've seen drivers around Luke have multiple incidents. We've seen Marine have multiple spins, Evans has had multiple spins, so has Hyper, as Marine has another spin, as I say that. And Luke is still battling with them having only made the one error in this race. So a few drivers really struggling for pace, it seems, at the back of the field at the moment. And the two drivers struggling the most are Thyman and Sully, battling out for the dunce at the back of the field on those soft compound tyres at the moment. Both of them with a lot of penalties. Thyman really struggling to keep the car on the road, and Sully just not with any pace at all tonight.
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic. I wouldn't have thought I would have seen Sully and Timon really sort of struggling as Hyper gets back past Larkin for that P10 spot, although they're both, Larkin all over the back of Hyper. Hyper just managing to get that move done both very low on ERS as well. I just think whoever's got DRS out of these two are just going to get the move done on the pair of them. But interesting thing to note as well, Slash has completely dropped off from the back of Mala, and Mala is so close now to the back of Dari. He's only 0.5 of a second back, and we're glad to go, we've got one more sector to go, but we're going on to the final lap very, very shortly. We could be seeing the Portuguese driver where he wasn't catching as quickly, but now he's within DRS of Dari. We might be seeing him go for a move potentially on this final lap, but at the moment it's just Dan's just looked completely clear. He hasn't made a fault, neither has Maledictus realistically. Just unfortunate with that 5-second penalty, but yeah, at the moment Mala and Dan, I think at the moment are just a class of the field. Unfortunate, as I said, it's just unfortunate for what happened with Maledictus, as we are now about to start the final lap of this race. And even for the dunce out, you can see Slash, in fact, actually had a bit of an oversteer moment. Forza Brendan now going to go for the move on Slash. And Forza Brendan now up into 4th position. Slash now down to 5th, and Sneaky might even try and move his way past Slash potentially. But no, he does have to stick behind him for now. This battle for P2 is definitely heating up. And not only that, now for P4 with Brendan now up into 4th position.
Yeah, up to fourth now for Brendan, but of course he's going to have the problem of having Slash with DRS right back behind him down the back straight, so that's going to be very interesting to see as there's another yellow flag. That is for Thyman and Sully, who've had a moment through the chicane, so their race continues to go horribly wrong. Slash, though, really struggling on those mediums, so Brendan, I think, is safe down this back straight from any threat from behind. Is Mala close enough? It all kind of relies on how low their wings are, and you've got to say it doesn't look like Maledictus is particularly fast in a straight line. Neither of them have any ERS, but look how late on the brakes Mala can be into the chicane in comparison to Dari, so Mala clearly a lot more comfortable in the braking zones than the Mercedes, but I think with the lack of ERS for both drivers, I don't think Maledictus quite has a fast enough car in a straight line to be able to challenge Dari unless he can switch for a move on the inside of 11. Dari's going to cover it off before he even gets there, but that does leave him vulnerable on the apex of the corner. Dari, though, is going to drive a tight line and block off the run for Maledictus. Smart defensive driving there from Dari, and now I think it's just going to take a mistake for the Mercedes man to let Mala through. This is just letting Dan get further and further away at the front of the field. He's burnt all of his ERS on this final lap, and Dan's going to come around the final corner and take a very comfortable first win.
Yeah, no, he certainly will. So, Maledictus is not going to go for that move into the final corner. But Dan, as I said, just been a complete cast of the field throughout this evening, and will take the first race of the evaluation races around France. Dari does end up finishing second in the end, with Maledictus rounding out that final part of the podium. Sneaky does jump up ahead of Slash with penalties, and I think actually ended up jumping him just about on track as well. But Forza Brendan does finish fourth. Sneaky in fifth, with Slash in sixth. Luke, without a penalty as well, in seventh position. Very well done to him. Marine does end up finishing eighth on track, but does jump down behind Evans and behind Larkin, the amount of penalties that he picked up. So Evans and Larkin in eighth and ninth respectively as well. Marine in 10th. Hyper and Supermug come across the line as well. Supermug jumps up ahead of Hyper with the less penalties to his name, and then the Dunce Hat Award, of course, with Sully and Tymon. In fact, both side by side, giving us some good battles between a pair of them as well. I'm intrigued to see how they'll do, probably more than likely next week in Lobby 3, because 40 seconds behind the rest of them is a bit interesting. Tyler just completely cutting across the track as well. I think he wants to get disqualified at this point, but as I said, I think I'm sure these two in Lobby 3 next week will be a bit interesting. As saying that, Timon has that half spin on that final lap of the final corner, so I think that's all he wrote for that one. But yeah, Dan, as I said, impressive display between them, as both just pushing each other across the line.
Yeah, not surprised by that one. They're definitely going to have a fun time in Lobby 3 in Mexico. You've got to say, with their performances, they're just struggling to get used to this game at the moment. Evans gets driver of the day for that's most positions gained, but that definitely isn't really the story of this race. It's Dan and Mala were the class of the field. Mala, of course, compromised by that penalty in the pit lane, unfortunately, so Dan really had an easy run of it towards the end of the race. But hats off to Dari as well. You've got to say, we thought Dari was going to fall right back into the clutches of Maledictus at the end, managed to hold on to that second place. So Dari, you've got to say, at the moment, he doesn't look like he's Lobby 1 pace. You would say that Dan and Maledictus, if there's anybody that's going to be moving up maybe next week, it looks like it would be Dan and Maledictus at this point. Without that, Dari looking like a solid front runner at the moment in Lobby 2. Maybe a bit of a surprise, considering he was kind of mid-pack in D3 last season. Jumping up to the front of Division 2 is quite a good jump for him, and traditionally in the past Dari's been known as a quality merchant who's really struggled to keep the car on the road in races, but on a game where it's even harder to do so, he seemed to acclimatise really well. So I've got to say, for me, Dari's probably the surprise of the night.
Yeah, no, I fully agree. I would also say a surprise on that, which is a bit more of a disappointment, would be Hyper down in 12th because of how he done in qualifying. Again, I know it's completely different between the pair of them, but yeah, I thought he'd be doing a lot better than down in 12th position, to be completely honest with you. But Dan, like we say, take the win for tonight. Dari does finish second. Maledictus rounding out that podium. Forza Brendan in fourth. Sneaky in fifth. Slash is in sixth. Luke is seventh. Evans in eighth. Larkin ninth. Marine in 10th. Supermong in 11th. And Hyper finishing in 12th. If it, of course, was a race, he'd be picking up the final points position with the fastest lap. And then Sully and Timon, as I said, battling for that last position as well between them. And that is all she wrote for the first evaluation race. Any sort of takeaways from that, Aiden? Anyone that, as I said, I mean, Dan and Maledictus, like we were saying, they definitely look like they could be for Lobby 1 next week. Anyone in particular, though, for Lobby 2 for next week, do you think could take it at Mexico?
It's going to be interesting. I think we're going to see a completely different grid this time next week. Unfortunately, the attendance didn't help tonight. We only got 14, so we weren't able really to see the full pace of everybody tonight, which is a shame. But I think with how spread out this field was and how spread out some of the fields were in Lobby 1 and Lobby 3, I think we're going to see a very different field this time next week. We could see a lot of new drivers, I think, especially from Lobby 3. I think you would say people like Nolan will be coming up to here, Funky Chicken as well, if his internet connection can get sorted, definitely have the pace to be in this lobby. Likewise, of course, we just mentioned Dan and Maledict just looking like they could be Lobby 1 candidates for maybe for a replacement for a couple of the PTR drivers. Nathan as well really struggled in Lobby 1 in this race, so there could be a few swaps there. So that'll be interesting to see how they do next time out. But I'm still going to keep my eye on Dari. I think Dari was a real surprise tonight. He did well in the social races as well. So he's kind of flying under the radar a little bit. He's not the main talking point of the lobbies, but he's doing a really, really solid job. So I think he could be a very strong candidate to be an early favourite in Division 2 if it stays this way.
Yeah, no, it certainly could be. So we'll wait and see for that for Mexico for next week. But thank you to everybody that has tuned in for tonight. As I said, make sure you guys do check it out for next week. Lobby 1, 3, and 4. If there's going to be, I think there will be 5 lobbies for next week. I don't know. We'll wait and see after tonight. But if it is the case, Lobby 1, 3, and 4 will be at 6:30 next week, and Lobbies 2 and Lobby 5 will be next week at 8 p.m. UK time. So make sure you guys are tuning in for that. But thank you to everybody that has tuned in for tonight, and we'll catch you guys next week for evaluation race number 2 around the Mexican Grand Prix.